Yes, we are here. Welcome to the Sunday Live, the morning after the night that was Canada and USA shocking the hockey world, things we have never really seen before. High level hockey, big boy hockey, however you want to describe it. It doesn't change the end result that Canada comes up on the losing end of a 3-1 scoreline to the juggernaut United States of America. Welcome to the Four Nations as we move from Montreal into Boston, with the Americans punching their ticket to the championship game Thursday night from Beantown. We'll take all your comments and reactions in the aftermath of Canada losing 3-1 to the Americans, where we saw three fights in the opening 9 seconds of the game. We'll talk about some of Canada's weaknesses and perhaps our question to get us going today. As you can see as I pop it up on the screen, where did Canada come up short in the 3-1 loss at the Bell Center at the hands of the United States to get things going? So I'm curious to get your take on what we saw last night and the takeaway from Team Canada's perspective. As we know, when it comes to where the overall standings are and the Four Nations standings, with the format that the Americans have 2 regulation time victories, Canada has an overtime win and a regulation time loss. The Finnish side also has an overtime win. They beat Sweden in the early game on Saturday afternoon. That means the Swedes on the wrong end of 2 overtime losses to Canada and Finland. So what does it all mean? That the Americans have punched their ticket to the championship game. They have 6 points. 3 points for a regulation time victory. Are you paying attention, National Hockey League? It's not a coincidence. I think we can draw a direct correlation to some of the tinkering ideas that the National Hockey League is looking at vis-a-vis the Four Nations tournament. Like I said, 3 points for a regulation time victory. The National Hockey League needs to adopt that ASAP. So they're going to the 3-2-1 format. And they're also going, as we've noticed here, we're going through the 10 minutes of extra 3-on-3 hockey, which I definitely love. As we say good morning to everybody. What's up, Tony? What's up, Rick? What's up, Vinny? Good to see you all nice and early on this Sunday morning. We're taking your questions live, and our question to get us going: where did Canada come up short against the Americans? Is goaltending. I mean, listen, the Canada side definitely had their chances once the game settled in. And obviously the McJesus goal, going full speed burst, roof daddy on Connor Hellebuck to get things going. And then quickly thereafter, the Jake Gensel equalizing goal past Jordan Binnington. And I don't see it any other way than you do, Tony, that goaltending is obviously the weak link to this Canada roster. And it's not a surprise. I think a lot of us knew that going into it. And I think there is room. If it were my decision to make, I would not go back to Jordan Binnington when Canada plays Finland in what is the winner of Canada-Finland on Monday goes to play the Americans on Thursday in the championship game. So what are we doing here? Are we playing tiddlywinks, or are we trying to win this Four Nations thing here? So I don't believe Jordan Binnington. I mean, he was good when he needed to be good against Sweden in the overtime victory off the stick of Mitch Marner. And listen, you can't take away from the fact that Jordan Binnington was good in overtime. But two things can be true. Jordan Binnington has let in several soft goals that I think the average goaltender in the National Hockey League probably makes. And knowing that it's do or die time. And are you going to really ride with Jordan Binnington in a potential lose and you're done against Finland on Monday? I personally wouldn't do that. And so Canada struggled in a couple of different areas. And listen, the Americans came in obviously with an agenda. They came in with a strategy. And that strategy, as we saw very early on, was let's take it to Team Canada. Let's get going. As Matthew Tkachuk and Brady Tkachuk alluded to, after that thrilling 3-1 victory over Canada, much to the dismay of the sellout crowd at the Bell Center on Saturday night. So as I mentioned, it's 6 points for the United States, 2 for everybody else. And when we look at the tempo and the pace that was set early on, it was very much deliberate. As we found out later that Brady Tkachuk, Matthew Tkachuk, and JT Miller had a group chat going, and they were strategizing about various ways to get into Canada's kitchen, and the strategic decision to be the intimidator. And it definitely worked, because you saw throughout the course of the game, after the 3 fights were done, where you had Matthew and Hagel going at it, and then you had Brady Tkachuk telling Sam Bennett, "You're next," and then basically JT Miller was ready to fight anybody at a moment's notice. His gloves were off early, and so Colton Parayko got him going. And I think that was the one fight that I think Canada had the lopsided victory in personally. But that was the tempo. It was the United States laying down the law. This is how we're going to play. This is our approach. What are you going to do about it? And from that moment on, you saw Charlie McAvoy two different times level the boom on Connor McDavid. I mean, so much so, I'm not saying Canada was intimidated, afraid to get dirty with the Americans on Saturday night in Montreal, but the Americans took the approach that we're in Canada. It's a political hotbed right now. It's a melting pot of what's going on, who's saying what, who's booing what, when are they booing, why are they booing? And it's a Saturday night in Montreal, Canada, USA. And personally, I thought that was one of the most interesting, entertaining, thrilling games I have watched in a long time. And maybe, just maybe, that was the best hockey game we have ever seen played on Bell Center Ice. Bell Center Ice. Don't come at me with, Montreal getting their butts whooped by Tampa Bay in a Stanley Cup final series. That was an unbelievable display of high intensity, up tempo, big boy hockey at the Bell Center. And the United States got into the heads of Team Canada. How many times did Canada drive the net after Connor McDavid got leveled a few different times by Charlie McAvoy, who had a phenomenal game for the Americans? The Americans got the best players in the world. Canada has the best players in the world. They had the best players in the world on the ice last night. Connor McDavid is the best player in hockey, and he's Canadian. Nathan McKinnon is one of the best players in hockey. He's Canadian. What happened to those two guys? They got stood up at the blue line repeatedly on Saturday night because Canada made a decision to go with high-end individual skill while the United States plays a more heavy game. Canada's just full stop, not as heavy as the Americans, and that was a big difference yesterday. But ultimately, yeah, goaltending. It comes down to goaltending. You need that timely stop. Jordan Binnington had to make that save, on Jane Gensel when Canada was up 1-0. So, full stop. That was a 5-star hockey game. The Bell Center crowd was fantastic, chanting Crosby, Crosby, Crosby to get this game going, standing on their feet, making their voices heard. But it wasn't enough to get the Canada side, the home side, if you will, over the hump of the big-time Americans who played a heavy game and made sure that they had that strategy implemented early. It was deliberate, and it worked for them. So it all sets up the United States with their 6 points, punching their ticket into the championship round on Thursday from Boston. The winner of Canada, if, Canada-Finland, if this game gets settled in regulation, whoever wins will match up with the Americans on Thursday for all of the Four Nations glory and that trophy. I don't know what they're calling it, the Four Nations extravaganza. I'm not sure. Let's get to some of your comments nice and early on this Wednesday morning. Don't forget to answer my question: where did Canada come up short against the United States? Obviously, goaltending would be right there, but I think the physicality for me also was a mismatch when guys like McDavid and McKinnon are continually getting stood up at the blue line, especially in that second period where that was a statement period, I thought, by the Americans, and did not let Canada really get comfortable whatsoever. And at times, I felt like I knew I was watching the game at the Bell Center, but at times I'm watching this, I'm like, are these the Canadians? Who's that out there? Because I mean, as I said already, the best players in the world play for Canada, and the Americans really had every answer for anything that Canada was able to do. So let's get to some of your comments on this Sunday morning on a snowstormy Sunday. Upwards of 35 more centimeters coming today in bits and pieces throughout the day and seeping into tomorrow as well. I felt like McJesus was trying to do way too much. McKinnon didn't do much either. Makar was invisible. Yes, obviously, because Cale Makar. And so we can point to the fact that ultimately, look, am I sweating Canada losing to the United States of America? I mean, it sucked. I wanted Canada to win probably just as much as you did here. But am I sweating? Am I sweating? Ooh, what is the future going to look like? Like, are the United States a better international team than Canada? No, they're not. They're not. I don't. Yeah, they got Connor Hellebuck, and good on Connor Hellebuck. I thought Hellebuck did an unbelievable job early on with some point blank stops on guys like Sidney Crosby and others with timely saves. And here's a guy that who's going to win another Vezina, but has the knock of, can he do it when the spotlight is on him? And on Saturday night in Montreal in hostile territory, Connor Hellebuck was good. But when I think about the Olympics, when I think about the fantasy world of Canada playing a best of seven with the full complement of Canadian players, absolutely, absolutely. And listen, it hurt, no doubt. You know, not having Cale Makar on the power play hurt Team Canada on Saturday night, without question. What also hurt was Canada didn't have Shea Theodore. Canada didn't have Alex Pietrangelo. Um, those are important factors to me. I think when we go back, and whether Canada wins the Four Nations or not, I think we can look back at the roster construction and talk about, is there a better way to have a more dynamic look to this team? You know, in hindsight, Monday morning quarterback style, should Mark Scheifele have made this team over others? I think it's certainly a worthwhile debate, considering how the Americans played and the strategy and how they looked and how much heavier they were than Canada on Saturday night in Montreal. Like, I'll give full credit to the Americans for coming into the building and for, in their minds, executing the best game plan to minimize the damage from Canada. And that second period was a game changer, an absolute game changer. But you need those timely stops. I get it. I get it. If you want to come at me from the goaltending angle, I get it. Je comprends. Goaltending and a timely stop when you're up 1-0 and McDavid is flying Brian, going roof daddy and Connor Hellebuck, you need your goaltender. And I was, watching the game at one point. I was saying to myself, Jordan Binnington needs to be hyper dialed. He needs hyper dialed, because I don't trust Jordan Binnington. At the end of the day, I don't trust Jordan Binnington. I don't think he's good enough. As a matter of fact, I thought the best goaltender for Canada was in the building. He was in the building, but he was watching the game in the stands with his father, and that was Carey Price. Like, I would die on this hill. If Carey Price was healthy and Carey Price was in goal last night, I think Canada wins, personally. I know it's a hypothetical, it's a fantasy land scenario, but Carey Price in that game, in that environment, with those guys in front of him, I think Canada wins, personally. But there's no way of proving that. It's just my feel. Am I biased? Probably. But it does come down to the timely stop. You're up 1-0. You had 3 fights in 9 seconds. You scored the first goal, man. That goal by Jake Gensel, it can't be. But look, it was a 2-1 hockey game. Gensel scores into an empty net. It's 3-1, game over. The United States have all the points. And now Monday is obviously a must-win game. And personally, I'm going with Aiden Hill. If it's my call to make, I'm not going with Jordan Binnington on Monday. So let's say good morning to some people here. What's up, Element? What's up, Chris? Good morning. I'm still hurt from yesterday. Time to make a goalie change. I don't disagree. Angela Esposito, good morning, Angela. Good to see you here. Good morning, good morning. I think the goaltending is where they're stronger. Team Canada also missed Cale Makar on defense. Other than that, the game was pretty even. Yeah, Canada had the edge in shots, and no doubt, Angela brings up a good point here. Goaltending was the difference. Go back and watch the highlights on the morning loop on TSN this morning, and the amount of opportunities Canada had early on Connor Hellebuck. But there he was. Connor Hellebuck is one of the best goaltenders playing hockey right now. And guess what? If Hellebuck wasn't up to the task, who do they fall back on? Jake Oettinger. Like, yes, it is lopsided. The depth chart is lopsided at the goalie position in favor of the Americans versus, what this country can roll out there, right? As Rick Springhetti jumps in this morning, biggest issue for Canada, the Americans do a great job covering the middle of the ice. Canada was not getting great opportunities, and when they did, Hellebuck was there. I think that's very well summarized, Rick. And I think that was on full display on certainly in that second period. As I mentioned already, I mean, Connor McDavid, Nathan MacKinnon, we're talking about arguably the best players on the planet. I mean, McDavid is the best player in hockey today, and he was getting stood up at the blue line. McDavid was left with really no options other than to feed the point. Same thing with Nathan MacKinnon. And a game like last night, I thought played to the strengths of guys like Charlie McAvoy, high-end skill player who hits to hurt, who's a punishing, picks his moments defenseman for the Boston Bruins. And he stood out to me. He was fantastic. He was fantastic for the Boston Bruins. And yes, as Rick highlights, there was Connor Hellebuck from in close, good positions, quick reflexes, where Canada didn't get the timely stop, certainly when they needed it. What's up, Ari? It was inevitable. The United States will overtake Canada as the world powerhouse in hockey due to the talent pool size. You see, I don't know if I agree with that today. Yes, clearly I'm biased. I'm a proud Canadian and a proud Hockey Canada supporter, but I still believe Canada has overall, to a man, the best players in the game today. They play for Canada. And I think if we're going to this hypothetical world, let's talk about how we think Canada would do at the Olympics with the full complement of players. Absolutely. Absolutely. We're talking about even Connor Bedard has a spot on this team. Macklin Celebrini has a spot on this team. Maybe in hindsight, depending on how the rest of the Four Nations plays out, maybe Canada needs to do a better job at roster construction as it relates to knowing your opponents, what type of game do you want to play? Because as fast as Team Canada players are, if you have mobile defensemen that are big, it can be a real neutralizer. And I think we saw a little bit of that. So maybe there's something to be said about having a little bit more beef on Team Canada's roster because the skill is undeniable. So I'm not so sure that I agree that it's inevitable that the Americans will overtake Canada as a world powerhouse in hockey because I still think we have the best players. I still think we produce the best players. Just in that moment, the United States had a very purposeful game plan and they talked about it. There's a group chat involving the Kachuk boys and JT Miller, and they talked about how they wanted to play Canada when they were having the group chat on Saturday afternoon. And absolutely, Matthew Kachuk goes to Hagel and says, "Let's go." And Hagel says, "I'm not going to turn my back to this guy. I'm not going to turn down the challenge." And the rest is history. 3 fights in 9 seconds. What an unbelievable game today. Our cities showed up. I agree. Thank you, Chris, for the comment. Hartford Whaler logo man. Let's go with Aiden Hill. I don't disagree. I don't disagree. I would go. I would not go with Jordan Binnington. I don't trust him. And it was interesting too. Did you notice how many times the Americans were getting in the kitchen of Jordan Binnington on Saturday night? Now that's deliberate, isn't it? Because of the quick temper that Jordan Binnington has as a reputation, and they were trying to, and that's a team that thought about their opposition and game plan for their opposition. Let's try to disrupt Jordan Binnington. Let's get into this guy's kitchen. Let's try to rattle his cage, all that stuff. And they tried various things, and it definitely worked. Okay, being last, good morning. Great goaltending is everything. Hab fans have always known that. Leveled, says Al. McDavid gets hit harder than that. McDavid got leveled. Connor McDavid got leveled at least twice by Charlie McAvoy, where McAvoy threw his hip into the midsection and Connor McDavid went flying in the air and landed on his keister. Yes, he got leveled twice by the same guy. And then what did they do? They stopped going and trying to drive, and they started dropping back to the point. What's up, Bob? What a great game and a fantastic start, dude. I agree wholeheartedly. That was awesome. Just awesome. BS, says Al, with the full caps. Canada's biggest problem is they have McDavid and McKinnon on separate lines, and Buddy brought his Tampa line. Yeah, if you can tone it down, Al, for a second, I can get on board with what you're saying. John Cooper talking about his Tampa Bay boys, because I think there's a dialogue. If we wonder about the absence of someone like Mark Scheifele on this Team Canada roster. What's up, Rick? Confident Canada will come back stronger. The USA barely won that game. Crosby made some mistakes, in my opinion. He won't let that happen again. He'll be on fire if they meet again. And if they do meet again, if the United States and Canada meet again, that, my friends, will be for all of the Four Nations face-off tournament glory. Because United States, again, if you're just joining me live, the United States now have 6 full points, so they've automatically punched their ticket into the championship game on Thursday from Boston. If Canada beats Finland in regulation on Monday night, then it'll be Canada, USA. And as I mentioned already, I am down with going with Aiden Hill at this point. Let's get to some more of your comments today. Jesper, good morning, Jesper. Does Canada have any young goalies in the pipeline? The situation is dire. I do not disagree. And when it comes to the pipeline of young, hopeful goaltenders, it doesn't look promising in the here and now. I think they're, I'm not going to lie, amateur scouting at the goaltending level is not what I would call my forte, but if it's something you're interested in, we can definitely dig into that and see what the future has. Obviously, Sam Montembeault, being one of the 3 goaltenders. We also saw on The Athletic this week about drafted prospects currently not in the National Hockey League. Where are they? Ivan Demidov, one of the top prospect in hockey who isn't drafted yet. Jacob Fowler is also on that list, but not a Canadian. But nevertheless. Yeah, I would say that Jake Guentzel, the first goal was not great. That was a puck that he had to have in a moment like that. I expect an NHL caliber goaltender to make that stop. The best goaltender for Team Canada was watching the game with his father. Carey Price was in attendance at the Bell Center on Saturday night. If Carey Price was in goal for Canada against the Americans, I believe Canada wins that game. Scheifele or Suzuki over Cirelli would have made the difference. Listen, I personally would have gone with Mark Scheifele over both of those guys personally. Like, I don't think a game like last night is where Nick Suzuki shines. Sounds like a lot of excuses, Sean. We lost fair and square. They have to be better no matter what. The U.S. has improved their program over the years so much, though, that they caught up with the best. I don't disagree. This was, and people were talking about this American roster before Saturday night. Like, they were talking about the American roster when it was announced that this is the best American roster on the men's side ever assembled in the history of their program. So, I mean, what you're saying, JL, has some truth behind it. They have improved. They have modeled their organization, whether it's through Hockey Canada and, taken away bits and pieces that they like. And now we're talking about, yes, no doubt. When you're the top, when you're standing in the number 1 spot on the podium, looking down on everybody who cares that's looking up at you is trying to figure out, how can I get there? How can I kick you off the top of the mountain and take over that post? Right? And that's what happens. Everybody else looks up and has been looking up. It was only a matter of time. Excuses, reasons, tomato. There's no doubt, JL, Canada has to be better, and it starts with figuring out a different game plan and getting that timely stop when you need it. Let's go. Ari continues just to make the same point over and over and over and over again. Fine. Okay. I don't agree. I still think Canada has the best players in the world. Al is having a morning. Carey Price is a mental case who hasn't played in years. What do you mean, Carey Price? What's up, Steph? Canada would have won with Jocelyn Thibault. Now that's a good one. I like that. What's up, Tony? All fair points. They got out-muscled. No Marchand until the third. Thank you for bringing that up, because that was a point where even on Saturday afternoon, if you follow me on Twitter, knowing, we going into the game Saturday night, you knew the Kachucks were going to be an issue. Full stop. You knew they were going to be an issue. When Mike Sullivan against Finland put them together with Jack Eichel, and then they played the game the way they did and their reputations, and then knowing that, with everything that was going on with the anthem and how those boys felt about their anthem getting booed, you knew the Kachucks were going to be a real pain in the posterior. And they were. And I thought Saturday afternoon, and that's why I tweeted what I did, Canada doesn't have an answer to Brady Tkachuk or Matthew Tkachuk. The closest thing they have to answering that is the rat, is Brad Marchand. And I honestly thought when I was getting ready for Saturday, and I tweeted it out in the afternoon, was they need the rat version of Brad Marchand. They need this guy to start sticking his fingers in the mouths of American players and getting under their skin and doing what got Brad Marchand to earn the rat nickname. He's a ratty player in his heyday. But thanks for pointing that out. Good on you, Tony, because I thought that was going to be a game where Brad Marchand has that personality that could thrive in a game like that. But there's no doubt it was layered the way Canada could not answer to how well the Americans protected that blue line on Saturday night. This version of the USA is the result of successful the U.S. NDP, the U.S. National Development Program. We see it at the World Junior level, and now it's trained. No doubt, this is, and we knew it going in, that the Americans are a wagon. They are heavy, they are skilled, and they are nasty. And to a man, I think Canada has the better core, but the physicality, the meat, the goaltending is tilted to the American side. Bob Marrier, what's up, Bobby? Good to see you. Good morning, brother. Surreal watching the game in South Beach, Miami at a sports bar. Hostile crowd in the end. A good time had by all. Team Canada will have to do it the hard way, no doubt. No doubt. I'm glad everybody was able to, at the end of it, Bob, watching in South Beach, Miami, that we were all able to have a good time despite having different points of view. At the end of the day, it is just a hockey game, right? Let's be honest. It is a hockey game. Canada made a couple of mistakes. Sidney Crosby, bad pass, giveaway, boom, it's 2-1 USA. You make mistakes, you don't get a timely stop, those things add up. And when it's a best on best, all it takes is you making one more mistake than the other team, and that could be the difference. That could be the difference there. Yeah, goaltending, lots of goaltending issues. I've seen this before too. Bob bringing up Tom Wilson's name. I saw some of that reaction online when Canada was just getting out muscled, and as a direct result, Tom Wilson's name being brought up. I don't mind the Tom Wilson, but I think I would be more in the Mark Scheifele business today if I had to choose between the two. I think Mark Scheifele has more skill personally, while also being a tough customer, 100%. Al just keeps asking the same questions. Gave up 2 goals. I thought both of them were kind of weak. The first one, Al, again, I'll repeat myself. The first Jake Gensel goal for the 800th time, Al, I thought was the softer play. Reinhardt with McDavid is a bust. Al, it's Sunday morning. Hope your day gets better. Did the fact that Makar was unavailable, interesting question. Obviously, when we talk about, Cale Makar not being there, the fact that Canada had a power play to get things, after all the fights were going left, right, and center to get things going, Canada, when the 3 fights were done, Canada was left with a 2-minute power play. I can't point to the fact that Cale Makar's illness prevented him from playing, and that was obviously the difference. Yes, it would have helped to have Cale Makar there, but I can't sit here with a straight face and tell you that if Cale Makar played that game, Canada walks away with a dub. It definitely helps. Not having Shea Theodore, not having Alex Pietrangelo, not having Cale Makar definitely hurts, 100%. Yeah, I don't, again, Andrew wondering about why Scheifele was left off the roster. Some people bringing up the fact that in these short tournaments, I understand, in these short little tournaments where you don't have a lot of time, like there's really no practice time to speak of. You're getting in there, you're trying to play, you're trying to work on a couple of different things, and then boom, you're into live fire, taking on live fire. I don't disagree with the strategy. I don't disagree that if I were coaching this team, I want guys that I know, and obviously guys that play for me. And it's not like Tampa Bay is this dreaded organization. Tampa's a very talented team. And, just for the simple fact that you don't have a lot of time to work things out, that you're trying to get guys on the same page as quickly as possible. So how do you achieve that? You achieve that by, you look for those instant connections. You look for that chemistry with guys that are probably on the same team, or maybe played junior together, or played in the CHL together, or the NCAA. And you're just trying to get going immediately without having to do a lot of catch-up work. So that's why I think Mark Scheifele wasn't on the team. That's why I think you saw a surplus of Lightning players on the team, because it comes down to that's who John Cooper knows. He knows what buttons to push. He knows how they play, and there's chemistry because of all the reps these guys have together. So I think that's that to me, that's how I choose to explain it. The fighting was not much of a factor. Canada more than held their own against the Americans, who look to take on guys who don't usually drop the gloves. They stood strong. I'm not saying either. I don't think the three fights, um, made Canada and put them in a position they were uncomfortable being in. I think what the three fights did basically was, here we are, this is how we're playing, match our intensity because we're not going away. That's what it was for me. Um, just one of those message sending kind of things, and credit to Team Canada, whether it was Hagel or Bennett or Parayko, that they are up to the challenge. Obviously, they're not shrinking away when Matthew Tkachuk says, let's dance, let's go, let's go. But yeah, it was three fights in the first 9 seconds of the game, and then Canada scored the first goal of the game. So I'm not sitting here, and I don't think I've made the point that the fight was a tipping point. It was more, again, the message being sent by the Americans, and then we saw as the game unfolded how strong the United States was in minimizing zone entries from the Canadian side, and Connor Hellebuck to me was the other big difference. If I point to areas where Canada didn't show up in, right? There weren't a lot. They made a couple of mistakes. The Crosby giveaway, bad pass, and ultimately not being able to get really anything going, especially in that second period where the United States made an absolute statement for 20 minutes, I thought. Canada was really missing a Corey Perry in his prime. Yeah, I don't disagree that those little pain in the butt type of players, but I think, Canada goes into that thinking about looking at the skill that they have up and down the four lines, right? And maybe that was going to be the difference. But as we found out, the United States really had a message and what they wanted to show Canada on Saturday night in Montreal. I forget what. So where's the quote from Matthew Tkachuk when he talks about how it was Saturday night in Montreal? They wanted to feel it, and they wanted to send that message to the entire building. But as I mentioned already, Connor McDavid goes roof daddy on Connor Hellebuck. And yeah, the absence of Cale Makar hurt, but also remember, the Americans are missing a Norris Trophy winning defenseman in Quinn Hughes. He's out for the entirety of the tournament. So Canada goes with high end skill, and the counter of a little bit more muscle. I thought was a little bit of a difference. Braden, 2 crappy goals on Jordan Binnington. You guys going with Jordan Binnington on Monday against Finland? Looks like McDavid is cursed with goaltending. Yeah, and it was funny too because then Monday he talks about Game 7 um, for Canada. I just feel I'd like to see Connor McDavid win something. It'd be nice. Rick Springhetti says the pipeline of goaltenders is pretty bare in this country at the moment. The good news, it's unpredictable. The position is certainly. So the next superstar may be a 5th round pick, but yeah, it's not optimistic. It's not, there isn't the next version of Carey Price apparently anytime soon. Nice call on the under. Yes. Hey, listen, we're just following the trends, Peter. It's the way these teams have been playing. More Tom Wilson, says Bob Murray. More. You think the amazing atmosphere in Montreal attracts some of these superstar players, says Chris Element. It's funny because at the tail end of Friday's show with me and Connor McKenna on TSN 690, and I get it. I admitted it at the time. I thought, watching the United States play Finland and the Americans were in the Canadians' dressing room. They were the home team for that game. And Austin Matthews was asked about, oh, what is it like to be in the Bell Center and use the facilities and the Canadians dressing room and all that stuff. And Matthews said, oh, it's great to have access to the facilities. It's awesome. And I thought to myself after hearing that from the Leafs captain, I said, I wonder, is it possible? Is it at all possible that there's a player at this tournament that experiences the facilities in Montreal, experiences the atmosphere? Because let's be honest, all the games played at the Bell Center have been very, very good. The atmosphere, the ambiance, very, very, very strong. You know, and obviously when Canada was playing against Sweden with Mario Lemieux, it was electrifying. Saturday night against the Americans in prime time was electricity, undeniable, right? And I thought to myself, what are the chances that there's a player on any of these teams that currently doesn't play for the Canadians that is looking around, taking it all in, everything from the facility to the dressing room to the ambiance to the quality of the ice, that they thought to themselves, I could play here. I want to be here because this city, for the two Canada games, Sweden and the United States, was as good as it gets in hockey. End of sentence. End of sentence. The vibe outside the building, the vibe inside the building, the fans on top of the action for 60 minutes and then into overtime. I could totally see a world in which the Montreal Canadiens rebuild goes on track, and that, yes, I would think that there is at least one player that played a game at the Bell Center for the Four Nations that thought to themselves, I could play here. This is where it's at. Yes, I could totally buy that. 100%. 100%. And I thought the fans did an unbelievable job. Unbelievable job. And we'll see what happens when we go to Boston starting on Monday. You make it sound like they owned us last night. They did in the second period. Yeah, they really did. They really did. As Savak says, in my opinion, both teams played very well yesterday. But as I mentioned, the USA goaltending is way better, no doubt. And I forget, there were a bunch of comments yesterday on the stream pointing about the difference in goaltending. And I was thinking about some of you, 100%, 100%. So yeah, yeah, Crosby. Yeah, and listen, when we talk in, this comment here from Peter, and again, I've mentioned several times the game was high end. This was big boy hockey on Saturday night. But why do we think that when we look at how Canada played against Sweden versus how Canada played against the United States, Peter and others, honestly, did Canada have as much jammed jump against the Americans compared to what we saw and how they played against Sweden? For me, the answer is no. The answer is no. I didn't think Canada looked as dynamic last night as they did against Sweden, my opinion, right? And why do I think that? What's the end result that makes me think that Crosby didn't look as good Saturday against the Americans as he did Wednesday against Sweden? Why? Is it because Crosby's tired? Is it because Crosby's 37? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Give credit to the United States, who were better than Canada in that second period. Go look at the zone entries. Go look at zone entry stats for that second period on Saturday night. And tell me what you see. There are a lot of things that can be true from Canada losing 3-1. Canada's a very good team. True. The Americans are a very good team. True. Did Jordan Binnington have his best game? No. True. Was Connor Hellebuck better than Jordan Binnington last night when he had to be? Yes, he was. That's all I'm saying. There are lots of truths here as we separate a winner from a loser. So that for me was a strong takeaway. Frankie, what's up, Frankie? With 8,000 question marks. Where is Jake Evans headed? I do not know. I do not know. I wouldn't be surprised if Jake Evans is an LA King. How about that for a guess? And while we talk about Montreal Canadiens, how about this guy? Have you all seen what what Michael Hage is up to? Michael Hage, the standout Canadiens prospect, currently doing his thing in Michigan at the NCAA level.
Michael Hage.
Oh, yeah.
Splits through two, still with it
move.
over the line. Nice move, and he scores! Michael Hage!
Let's go. Those helmets are fire. Look at this. I want to watch this again. Takes it with
Michael
speed,
Hage
reads the middle of the ice. Now
through
watch
two,
what he does
still
right
with it
there.
over the
Sucks him
line.
in,
Nice move, and
then with the strong finish.
Michael Hage! Splits.
That was awesome. So that's what's coming. That's
Hage.
what's coming. That's what's coming around the corner, right? That's what's coming around the corner. So there's a nice little nifty highlight. I wanted to play that for you, knowing what's coming as we talk a little bit Montreal Canadiens action in the aftermath of this Four Nations tournament. Montreal gets back to work on February 22nd. The Canadiens' next practice is actually Tuesday next week. So these guys will be coming back in from their various vacations. I think Jake Evans is in the Bahamas or went to the Bahamas. So there's a little Jake Evans there. You want to know where Jake Evans is going, Frankie? He went to the Bahamas. That's where Jake Evans was yesterday. Let's see what else we got here. We got so many comments. Canada, Finland coming up on Four Nations, and the winner of that game in regulation will take on the Americans Thursday. Yeah, very excited. Very, very, very excited. Tournament's been great. Tournament's been absolutely great. 100%. Then boo that guy, not a hockey player. Simple. Canada look bland, says Peter Puck. Oh, boy. Let's see what we got here. John, good morning, John. With all due respect to the Canada-U.S. hockey rivalry, I wasn't impressed of the U.S. anthem disrespect for Montreal. Well, what can I tell you? You have a lot of company. There were a lot of people. I mean, just go online. You'll see an entire community of people that feel the way you do. Considering how great the hockey game was yesterday, some people don't like it. Some people do. I'm not here to tell you who's right or who's wrong. That's just where this whole thing has been going. So I don't know what to tell you, but yeah, ultimately, where's Jake Evans heading? He headed to the Bahamas. After that, I do not know. Canada's back at Canada. The Canadiens are back at practice on Tuesday as they get set for their February 22nd return to NHL action. So still another full week off. Coming up. And when we look at where we are with the Four Nations, beyond that, should be interesting to see when Canada and who Canada goes with against Finland. Not so sure where they go. Bueller didn't think the last night's game, not the most entertaining game I've ever seen after a promising start, says Bueller. Tom Wilson would have been a key piece in that game last night. But that's the thing, though, right? I don't disagree. But did we? What do you put the odds at? Like 100%? Do you think John Cooper expected the Americans to be so physical? No one thought for a second there'd be 3 fights in 9 seconds. Obviously, that's not what I'm saying. But do you think Canada was prepared for the physicality, considering that the Americans are a heavier team? Did they when they game planned for this tournament, did they think that was going to be an angle? I'm not sure. And if they did, obviously they had to think then that their skill, the overwhelming skill from Canada, was going to be the difference. That was going to be the counterpunch. If the Americans were heavier and a little air quote nastier, Canada's skill was going to be what tipped the scales back into Canada's favor. I'm not so sure. And at this point, that's it. Like we can sit here and react to it after the fact. I totally understand that. More anthem fighting in the comment section. That's okay. You guys can sort it out yourselves. It only bothered me last week when the 15-year-old was singing. That was bad. And that's why I thought, too, it was interesting that The final game here, the final game is in Boston. The final game is in Boston, Peter. It goes Thursday, where the Americans again have punched their ticket. The fact again that Canada has 6 points. The United States have 6 points, excuse me. And with that win, that win, they are there, and they're very much feeling this thing. And now they get to go to Boston, right? Um, so we got Canada and Finland coming up next. Sweden and the Americans will go, and then on the 22nd, it's the finale. So Canada and Finland play tomorrow. I believe that is an afternoon game. That's a 1 o'clock game from Boston tomorrow. So that should be hella interesting to see. Again, if Canada beats Finland in regulation time tomorrow afternoon, it's Canada USA on Thursday in Boston for the finale. Yeah, I see, Tony. We're talking about the strategy, right? Who was doing what? Remember hearing that people were concerned with goaltending and the size. Like we knew all along when the United States, and we were talking about this for months and months and months. Like the United States was going with Connor Hellebuck and Jake Ottinger, and we were like, who's going to be Canada's goaltender? And like Sam Montembeault is going to be one of 3 goaltenders. Logan Thompson doesn't make the cut, so it's Aiden Hill, Jordan Bennington, and Sam Montembeault. Aiden Hill would be my guy tomorrow afternoon at 1. I would not, Jordan Bennington, 2 games. I've seen enough. Yeah. Tomorrow afternoon. Thank you. Thank you, Hartford Whalers. We know Canada, Finland tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Can't wait for that one. How are you guys going to, we're going to call in a snow day tomorrow? You guys not going to go to work? You're going to stay home and watch Canada, Finland? I mean, are we that hyped for this? I think with the first fight, it mattered. I don't disagree, Charlottetown Spud. Good to see you here. What's up, brother? I mean, if anything, if there was a lesson to be learned here, if there was a lesson to be learned, do not overlook anybody. Look how good Finland was against Sweden. I mean, if we were handicapping this tournament of the 4 nations, I think maybe there was an argument to be made that of the 4, maybe Finland, not that anybody's bad, but in terms of roster construction, maybe Finland was the 4th most talented nation at this tournament. I'm not so sure. Oh, that's right. It's Family Day in Ontario. And I could tell you this, working for Bell Canada, that Family Day is a holiday that they've adopted. But I will be at work tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Make sure you tune in to TSN 690 tomorrow as we'll get set for Canada and Finland. Rick, back in the comments, the thing is, the Kachucks and Miller were not going to drop them against Wilson, in my opinion. They were only going to pick their spots. Interesting. I mean, when we look at the fact, again, so I guess the opinion is that Tom Wilson makes the team. Tom Wilson is invited. He's with Team Canada, and that's how the game starts. John Cooper throws up the Tom Wilson line. They counter with the Matthew Tkachuk line, and what they don't dance. It's an interesting perspective. When's Ivan Demidov coming? Hurry, hurry, hurry. Yeah, it doesn't matter because he doesn't play for Canada. But I feel you. At some points yesterday, I felt like I was watching the Canadians with Team Canada just incapable of getting past the American blue line. Yeah, I just want to get back to this comment here about the anthems and everything else. I thought it was an interesting strategy that they brought out military personnel before Saturday's game. I said, oh, maybe there's a way. You're not going to boo at that point. But no. They booed, and they booed, and they booed. Yeah, and we're getting killed, absolutely obliterated with a snowstorm here as well. So the Montreal Canadiens get back to action on the 22nd of February and back at practice on Tuesday. But no doubt, when we look back at this, Thomas Harley coming in on standby for Cale Makar, questions that Canada needed to answer when it came to how they would effectively replace one of the best defensemen in hockey, especially knowing that in the overtime win over Sweden, Makar played almost 30 minutes. It was the most of any skater, by the way. So his absence went beyond ice time for sure. Having someone as good as him on the first team power play definitely hurt. But I can sit here and tell you this morning, no doubt, that Cale Makar's there, Canada wins. And the fact that they go to Josh Morrissey to operate in Makar's place on the power play and they go for 2, yeah, it stings, no doubt. And Uh, they need Cale Makar back for Monday's game against Finland, 1:00, by the way. So should be fantastic. Ready to see a must-win game. Must-win game. Would you guys make a change? Would you make a change? Would you go back to Jordan Binnington on Monday, give him a chance? I mean, remember, John Cooper is fond of, and the sell job when they announced Jordan Binnington as the tournament starter for Sweden, that he is a battler. He is a battler. Even though Aiden Hill is closer to winning a Stanley Cup than Jordan Binnington was, they still went with Binnington because of that battler reputation. Would you make a change? Would you give Jordan Binnington an opportunity to backstop Canada in a must-win game tomorrow afternoon against Finland? Let me know in the comments. I personally would I would go with Aiden Hill on Monday afternoon. I've never seen a game with such little space, and again, more compliments to the Americans, who looked at the best path in their opinion was knowing that they're a heavier team, that Canada loaded up on skill. And as one person pointed out in the comments here, when they talk about here, Gilbert says build a hockey team, not an all-star team. I think there's some merit to that comment. And I think you learn that lesson by going through it. You know, I certainly am not the one saying, if they did this, if they did that, they win this hockey game on Saturday night. I think you can react to how the Americans beat Canada at the Bell Center on a Saturday night. And I think Gilbert, I think there's some truth to that hockey is the ultimate team game, and that you can have the Connor McDavids and the Nathan McKinnons and the Sidney Crosbys of the world, but those guys can be neutralized. And the Americans did a solid job of that in the second period, en route to a 2-1 empty netter, 3-1 win. But those are the margins. At this level, those are the margins. Mistakes are minimal. Timely stops are everything. Canada made a couple of mistakes. They let in a soft goal on the Jake Gensel 1-1 goal, and the Americans stood tall at their blue line. And when you put those three things together in a story, that tells how the United States skated off with a 3-1 win. 2-1 empty netter. Bing, bang, boom. Thanks for coming. Tony says, go with somebody else. Montembeault or Hill. Hill would be my guy. Was that the loudest Olay chant ever? That was awesome. That was very, very good. They started going with Crosby when Crosby came out as they with the captain there for those ceremonial banners, and then the chants of Crosby, and then Olay was going. I'm like, damn, Montrealers showed up big time yesterday. Very incredible. One of those games where you're watching it, and certainly with 3 fights in the first 9 seconds, you're like, how am I not at this game? How am I not at this game? It's in your backyard. Man, oh man, oh man. I definitely wanted to be there yesterday, 100%. Peter Puck, I would switch it up. I'd go with Aiden Hill. If Canada doesn't win in regulation, what's the path to the final? They're going to need some help. They're going to need some help because, as I mentioned, the United States have 6 points. And so it's a 3-2-1 point format, right? So the United States, I mean, I don't see a path to Sweden winning, and I'm not so sure about the tiebreakers, what the tiebreakers are. So, like, if Canada wins in regulation and Sweden wins in regulation, right? So Finland would be out because Finland loses in regulation. And in the world in which Sweden wins in regulation, Canada beats Sweden. So that would be the tiebreaker. So Canada needs to win in regulation. If they win in regulation, they're in the final. End of sentence. Nothing can happen in the other game. Sweden and USA play, when is it? On, I think they play on Thursday. They play on Thursday. That there's no way. So if Canada wins tomorrow afternoon in regulation, there's nothing that can happen in the Sweden game. As far as I could tell, that will change. So Canada wins. They beat Finland in regulation Monday. We'll see you in the final against the United States from Boston. Just joined. Sorry if it was mentioned before. Should have chose Tom Wilson. No, it's been mentioned plenty of times. Thanks for being with us. Better late than never. That's what I always like to say. I think the Americans have better chemistry, says Peter Puck. The most shocking thing I ever saw at the Bell Center was the Montreal public cheering on Brad Marchand when he skated down the ice with the puck. It was a bizarro world, 100%. 100%. Marner getting love, but Montrealers did such a great job for our turn hosting this tournament. Austin Matthews getting the jeers, Crosby, McDavid getting the love, the Ole Ole chants. I thought Montreal hockey showed up in a major, major way. Very, very impressive. I had friends here that took the train to Montreal. They went to both games yesterday, and the atmosphere was electric. Habs are in beach mode. They're coming back. They got practice on Tuesday as they get set for a return to action coming up. I'm ready to get this Canadian season back on the rails here when we talk about where the Canadians are, knowing the UFAs that they have to deal with. And as we look down, right, Montreal plays at Ottawa on Saturday. So in 6 days, the Canadians are back taking on the Ottawa Senators. Of course, Montreal has lost their fair share of games. They are 1-8 in their last 9. That one win was a 4-3 decision over San Jose. They more or less have been outscored 15-6 in their last 3 games. 6-3 to LA, 4-0 to the Devils, 5-3 to the Lightning in their last game on Super Bowl Sunday. So Montreal is back in action in 6 days. They play at Ottawa. And we're back to the traditional format starting on Saturday, Tuesday, Thursday to get things going. So Montreal is going to hit the road. They're going to go out to Western Canada to open up March. And then they have another little bit of a road trip out to the Islanders. It's weird. They go to the Islanders and then they come back home to play Colorado and then go to St. Louis and Philadelphia, Carolina, and Florida again. So it's going to be a wild stretch run for the Canadians down the home ride here to get them back to where they need to be. And then ultimately, let's get going. Let's get going. Sean Campbell, U.S. Sweden on a Monday night. Yeah, that's at 8 p.m. That's on 8 p.m. And then we can look at Canada and Finland on Monday at 1, and then Sweden and the United States. And then the final, as I mentioned, the final will go on Thursday from Boston, USA, against, hopefully, Canada. Just beat Finland in regulation tomorrow afternoon and we'll be good to go. And then if Canada can do that, then they will be the team that plays the Americans' revenge game for Four Nations glory. There's nothing Sweden can do because Canada will have the tiebreaker over Sweden. So thank you so much for being with us on this Sunday live stream. Good stuff as always. Lots of comments, lots of positive reaction. And don't forget, we have lots coming up on the channel all week. No doubt, as Peter Puck says, D'Amico's been all over the Four Nations since it's been here, and of course we'll be together this week. So we got lots of interesting things to say. So make sure you're with us. Turn those notifications on. Hit the like button. It certainly helps everything we do here. Enjoy your Sunday. Stay out of the snow. Hopefully you got all your errands done, and we can stay dry. And we'll reconvene certainly over the course of this week as we get closer to the NHL trade deadline.